Morning, everybody. So, welcome to another video lecture for Philippine politics and governance. And in today's video, I'll be discussing the pre-colonial government, which is part of um, the coverage of the third monthly examination. Basically, in this discussion, we'll be analyzing how our ancestors prior to the arrival of the Spanish colonies built and stabilized their government because the main and false narrative that have been being taught in the Philippine history is that civilization or government started when the Spanish colonies arrived. But that's false because even prior to that, there's already an existing government in the Philippines. And that's the thing that we are going to discuss. We're going to analyze as well its nature. We're going to take a look at how or what are its checks and balances and how it basically operates into a singular entity that a leaders is basically doing. So generally, everything started to a boat, all right? A boat of our ancestors, which is called balangay. So basically, balangay is a Malay term where people started to group themselves and start to live their lives. So why balangay? Why a boat, right? It's basically back then, our ancestors used to travel from one place to another in purpose of survival. So meaning to say, if their place or if the habitat that they are in are not serving their purpose, not serving their needs anymore, they have to travel. And the balangay itself is basically helpful to move to one place to another. And eventually turns out to becoming a barangay, which until now we are observing in the Philippine governmental structure. So what is a barangay, right? Barangay is basically number one, it is composed of 30 to 100 families. All right. So it's just a small community where trading happens, businesses happens, um, politics happens, the power play happens. So what you see in a normal day right now is just like as the same as what they will have been doing. It's just that it is on their own natures of operation. So basically, in the barangay, it is ruled or headed by a dato or what we call a chieftain. All right. So a chieftain or a dato is responsible in protecting their lands, in protecting their people from any colonizers or any aggressors that would harm their barangay. So again, debunking the false narrative that there is no government prior to the arrival of the Spanish or Spaniards, right? Barangay itself has already a legislative, executive, and judiciary form of government. There have been a lot of researches that these three equal branches of the government that we've been observing in the 1987 Constitution is already existing prior in the pre-colonial government. So what is that? Right? Let's try to take a look at the government structure of the pre-colonial government. So basically, this is the structure of a pre-colonial government, all right, during the Spanish colonization. But if you're gonna deep down towards how it's operating, this is where you will be able to appreciate more how their executive, legislative, and judiciary definitely works. So if you're going to check row number two, all right, so everything, okay, in executive, legislative, and judiciary, it's all headed by a dato. So we will now cross out the principles of checks and balances since we are basically following a unitary structure of government. So meaning, a dato is really, really powerful in the pre-colonial government. So if you are given the power of a dato, you can execute a law, you can legislate, and basically you can juridicate, right? So these things, all right, is already existing in the pre-colonial government. So what do they do in the executive branch in a pre-colonial government? It's the same, execute laws. So we already believe, parang Aristotle said, all right, and Abraham Lincoln even argued that people do have their self-vested interest. So meaning to say, we cannot live without laws because basically laws regulates our movement and limits our movement in a certain community. And these limitations should be followed. So basically, the job of the dato is to promulgate laws that, for example, this is what men can do, this is what women should do, this is what children should do, or this is what the people should do. So these things, all right, are job of a dato. Okay. Now, when it comes to legislative, they do have the same time the power to enact laws, create new policies, create new regulations. In judiciary, on the other hand, the dato can also judge the cases and crimes in the barangay. All right. So they are the ones who also judging if the accused is guilty or not, if the accused is basically falsely accused or whatnot. All right. So in executive branch, okay, back then we have this what we call babaylan. Babaylan is like, imagine of this. It's like the DOH of the 1987 Constitution. Because back then in the pre-colonial government, when people are sick, they immediately run to a babaylan. So basically, babaylan cures all the illnesses in the community. She is responsible of making sure that um the health of of the constituents are actually well off. All right. So in legislation, how do they enact laws? All right. They are not alone. Right. The datu is not alone. So basically, they have this council of leaders where these are the former datus who cannot govern anymore, primarily because they came from a battle, they lost capability of leading, they lost capability of protecting the people. All right. So basically, consultations will happen, all right, during the legislations and enactment of laws. When it comes to judiciary, though, um, when they are in a trial, okay, they are also, the datu is also consulting the council of elders, which means because traditionally, what we believe, right, is that what they believe, I mean, is that they believe that elders know better than anybody else, all right? So they felt like that in a barangay, the elders are more capable and suitable to basically judge somebody's action because they are already experienced prior to them. So that's the reason why there is a council of elders to judge if the case that they're being heard is basically guilty or what. There are other punishments as well in the pre-colonial government that are basically um inhumane. Like for example, they will leave your faith to to a wild fish. They'll throw you to a lake or a river with wild fishes out there, and then if they will not bite you, then meaning you're free and you're innocent. But if they will kill you, then you are guilty. Stuff like that is still that exists in the pre-colonial government, but again, through trials in their judiciary. Okay. So going back to legislative, once the laws are enacted, the Umalohokan would basically make the announcement that these are the new promulgated laws that you need to follow. So all of those structure, all of those operations and flows of the power of the dato, it comes from a central being, which is a dato, which makes their family a royal family. So it's kind of monarchical and at the same time autocratic form of government during the pre-colonial government because the family of the dato already assumes power. Okay, so it runs in the blood already. So they became maharlikas or dugong bughaw, basically, in the pre-colonial government. So that's how the pre-colonial government works. So it's not true. Okay, it's not true that we do not have a government prior to the Spanish colonization. It's not true because it is already existing. What you see on your screen right now, it is already existing. All right. So do you see principle of checks and balances? The question is The answer for this is very simple already. The answer is no. All right. There's no such principles of checks and balances. But if you're gonna take a look at it, even if there are consultations from the Council of Leaders and Council of Elders, the decision still comes from Dato. It still comes from singular entity. So checks and balances will not happen in that particular field. So now, do you see women empowerment? The answer for this is very simple too. No, all right, because they still believe traditional point of view that women should just stay at home, right? So if you'll see here, all right, nobody can act like a dato or nobody if they can in a circumstantial situation they are in the least choice, so women are basically having a hard time to fill in a barangay or pre-colonial government. So do you think the barangay government is effective? You're going to take a look at it in the pre-colonial government. It is effective because this we have something to start. But if you're going to analyze it in a 21st century political point of view, barangay government has a lot of potential to improve themselves, especially when it comes of the kind of leadership from the grassroots. Because we are so focused in the national government performances, at the same time LGUs, but we are closing our eyes in barangay government's effectivity. Like for example, a barangay kagawad was just basically famous because lagi siyang nasa inuman sa kanto per kanto kada gabi. Alright? And he is already a kagawad. So it says a lot of things on how do we see um the barangay government's efficiency in building good leadership. So if we want to have a better governance and better government, it has to start in the grassroots itself. And you have to remember that the grassroots of all the government structure in the Philippines is the barangay government. It has to be empowered, and at the same time it has to be given a lot of clear jurisdiction of powers. All right. So basically that ends for pre-colonial government. In the next video, I'll be discussing the Spanish colonial government and how did we transition to that. And at the same time, I will be discussing how these long existence of Spanish colonization contributed a lot when it comes to our sense of governance. If you have any questions, just put it in the comment section down below. And please give a like and share to this video, to this channel, and at the same time, share this for other people to see how important barangay government is. Thank you so much.